the thing that you and I realized is like everyone except a few kind of Shark Tanky venture capital plays, almost everyone else was like, I did this thing at a job. I mastered it. I went on my own. I did it for other people. I built an agency or business around it. And now look, and then I sold that company. And now I, have lots of choices and agency and freedom to do whatever I want to do. And whatever that story is after they've cashed out is not as interesting to me as the journey from a job to the business to the exit. Exit Plan is a podcast for business owners and those who want to be business owners. I'm always in search of the lesser known stories of entrepreneurship. In the Exit Plan podcast, you'll hear stories from startup to sale and hear from the professionals who help business owners achieve their exit. Hosted by me, author and private equity manager Dana Robinson, along with my co-hosts and guests, you'll hear real stories, tips, and tools that will help you plan for the exit you want, whether you are still working at a day job or running a business. Let's get started with this episode of the Exit Plan podcast. Hey, everybody, it's Dana Robinson and Nathaniel Broughton. And if you've had this podcast pop into your podcast feed, it's the Opt-Out Life guys. Nate, it's been a few years since we have podcasted, and we're bringing it back. And this is a little bit of reskinning, reviving, rebranding, but hopefully still appealing to the audience that followed us pre-COVID and kind of into that first year of COVID. But man, we've done a lot in our lives individually in the last couple of years, and thought it'd be kind of fun to catch up on the listeners who found this popping up on their podcast feed, what we've been up to. And I'm just going to ask you, man, you're looking ripped. So I know there's one thing you did a lot of during COVID.
And that was workout. Is that what you're saying, baby?
Yeah. 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 I think I remember you like immediately ordering a whole bunch of gym equipment because you're like, can't go to the gym.
This is true, man.
And
I had to do that. That was the first thing I did. And it was life-changing because I realized I could just do it all at home. So, insert your thing from COVID that you figured out you didn't have to do the way you used to. And that was one of the daily repetitions that was able to do at home. Although part of the reason I'm dressed this way is I just got back from going to the regular gym again. So, you slip in and out of it. Still got the stuff. And it's not as crowded as it used to be. So I like that. I think a lot of things in life are, there's a new tint to them after going through that, and a better tent. So maybe we can talk about some of that stuff. But yes.
yeah, like in what ways do you think that your life changed for the better, or the pivots, the things that you're like, you know, we went completely different directions in terms of
Yeah.
the things that occupied our time. And I admire yours. I like, what are the lessons that you come out with?
I don't know. We might have to weave our way to the lessons themselves, but I think some of the things that changed were, one, like we stopped going to the office as much. I mean, we never really had to go to the office, but there was certainly more like we had that like hang sesh sort of setup with the old studio, which was in an office where some of our friends were, and just the routine of going there every day was something that got kind of flipped. It was funny because actually when COVID hit in the first 6 or 9 months of it, me and two other people were still going into that office constantly. So it took me a while to break away from it. But yeah, that's one big thing. I think it got a little bit away from like, oh, try to get to the office by a certain amount of time, and then you're there for a certain amount of time, and you got to get all the things done you want to get done, to making it work here at home or remote and working more in spurts, which probably fits some sort of opt-out life approach to things, right? Like go to the gym in the middle of the day and figure out, another time to sprint on work things, which I think I kind of always wanted to do, but for some reason I was a little bit more stuck in that, go work out real early and then get there and be there all day and get all the things done you need to get done. So I'm a little bit more like flexi time. And whether that, I don't think it happened overnight, but I think through the process of the last 3.5, almost 4 years, it's kind of become more natural to do it that way, to work in spurts and change locations. And I think I'm probably happier for it, for sure.
Yeah, I remember the early on, you were like, you know what, I can't go hang out in a hotel lobby, which is a thing you as your brand. Hang out at a
Right.
hotel lobby as a maybe get some work done, maybe just chill out and you know change perspective. You
Hmm.
started renting Airbnbs because they were suddenly widely available and cheap.
Yeah.
And just like going, take the family and just go someplace with a yard and a pool and just like stretch out. And you got work done when work needed to get done, right?
Right. Yeah, I think that was part of it. I love that little hack too. That was a beautiful time. Both both on the Airbnb side, like early on, because it was like you're not allowed to leave your house at all, and it's like, well, I don't want to be stuck in my house. I want to not that my house sucks, but I want to go to a big house on that's got property and a pool and things. And that first one we rented in Temecula, I don't think I left the grounds for a week, but I was sprinting up and down the driveway, and there were fruit orchards and stuff attached to it, and it was absurdly cheap, right? Like usually like
Yeah.
$1,000 a night, and it was like $150 a night. So
Right.
that was
Yeah.
great, and that probably was the first like smack in the face of like, oh, life can kind of be a version of this a little bit more than it was. And the hotels were like that too. Like some of the privately owned ones here, like the Lodge at Torrey Pines, I mean, was open the whole time, which was awesome. So we stayed there.
And it let you kind of choose a place that was fun for the family and just kind of lifestyle wise. The work presented itself as it does for you, and you kind of just processed it and managed it however, whenever.
Yeah, yeah, that's definitely, and that's continued on for for whatever reason that's been able to work for me. Like, and I mean, I think a lot of people that have regular jobs are doing it that way more than they used to, obviously, right? And
Yeah.
so I don't think it's unique just to my situation at all. I mean, you've been on an interesting journey yourself,
Yeah.
and kind of landed in that same sort of space as far as like working. I mean, you were always kind of bopping around, but you had an office still too, right? And that
Yeah. I
sense.
had 3 at one point.
Nice.
So maybe even more because during COVID, I bought a property management company and then was shopping for another one and then tried to buy a plumbing company, and that led to me, in fact, just working for a plumbing company that was private equity backed, and then, bought another management company to roll into the first one. As I exited the plumbing company and HVAC company, sold the combined rolled up property management companies, and that year, so a year ago, I was just getting out of the law office. I sold my practice to Kayla. I was just getting out of the property management office. My office with you expired, right? We actually still sort of have a desk in Gabe's office.
That's true.
I see
That's
the opt out license plate sits there, and I could tell you'd never been there. There's dust on the desk.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I definitely had a lot of obligations during COVID, and it wasn't really until the end of call it the end of COVID, I guess, last year, where I finally like kind of wrapped up the property management roll up, HVAC and plumbing business, and got myself out of every obligation go to an office. And right now I'm in the basement, I guess you'd call it. It's a sound treated audio video studio where we produce some of the LinkedIn learning videos
It's a sweet
in my
setup.
house. Well, the fact that you put yourself in this position could have freed you up to do just about anything you wanted to do. And the thing that you're doing the most, besides, kind of living your version of the dream, is your kids have turned into like baseball super players, right? So the, to be at this place in life where you not only are not a guy working at an office where you're not around your kids, but you're like part of this journey that they're on where they're doing something that I never thought kids could get into a sport like that. I always thought it was the parent that was like driving them to be like,
Yes, I mean you're definitely right that it's kind of become more of a thing, to put it lightly. I'm sure I talk about it every single time. I was having lunch with somebody over right by the old office last week, and I don't think we brought it up to like 45 minutes in, but I was like, man, I had to bring it up at some point,
yeah,
just because it dominates the schedule more than anything else. But yeah, it's been really cool to be a part of. Like, I think the part to talk about is like how I'm able to do it and how I'm enjoying doing it because I'm able to put so much time into it. There's some other dads or parents on the team that are maybe a little bit older typically than where I'm at, that seem to have a little bit more time to be there at the 3 o'clock practices, or to at all the games, or to go out and play catch, and to take their kids to all the extra stuff. Like today, my son is going to speed school, which he does like once a week, and that's at 3:30, and we got to leave at like 2:55 to get up there. And at the same time, I bring my computer and my phone, and so we get the time in the car up there to be a part of it, and then I can sit there and glance at him as he does it. But then I'm also like, it's also one of the most productive hours of my day, because that one's actually kind of quiet and a little less social than like the actual practices where there's more parents. So you find ways to kind of, I guess, work around it, and still make it work. And it definitely feel very lucky to be able to put the time in like that. Like I wouldn't have it any other way. Like I think I used to like be more selfish with schedule, or set up things in a certain way so I could go to a hotel lobby or go travel. And we still do those things too, but right now it's more about like creating the optionality to be able to go to all those things with the kids, no matter what it is. And that's usually like a early to late afternoon thing. And you pick your spots on like, when you can get things done as well around it. So I should tell this little anecdote. Last night we were like laying in bed with my older son, and he was talking about how some kids at his school go to like an after school thing till 7 o'clock at night. He's like, I could go to that thing till 7 every day. And I'm like, yeah, man, like think about all the time we've spent together between the hours of 2:30 or 3 in the afternoon and 7 p.m. in the last 9 years. I'm like, that's our whole life together, dude. Like that would
Yeah.
suck if you had to go do that. And I know some people have to do that, and I don't want to say it that way, but those are every memory I have, and everything that we do together is in those moments. So I feel lucky to be able to take advantage of that. And it was funny that he brought that up.
It's the same story we've told for years. You didn't, have a $10 million, $50 million, exit where you're just like the you don't have trust fund. You have a house that's rational and proportioned to your needs, and you've chosen not to need a
Right.
vast estate that you probably could have bought if you wanted to throw yourself into work and business, right? So you're choosing the life that you're living, and it's giving you all that freedom, and you can't ever get that back with your kids, right?
Right. Yeah, dude. Totally. I get a lot of random things about business, and like, oh, do you want to invest in this thing or go do this thing? And I'm a lot more picky on the things that I choose to do. And the real reason is to protect that time, right? Like I've optimized enough to where like I can make enough money to pay for the stuff I want to do. I've got the time that I want, and I'm going to ride that wave until this season of life, I guess, changes, which it inevitably will. And then maybe I'll get back more into business and go after the estate thing. But for now, I'm chilling. I'm good.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's funny you say that because I'm doing private equity stuff now, which means we're buying businesses. You're the first person that I approached when I finished up with the HVAC and plumbing. I was like, "What are we doing? What are we buying? What let's do this." I've got a great affirmations from how to run this playbook,
Yeah, yeah,
and you were like, "Yeah, I can invest a little, but I'm not going to put my time into that." And a year later, we're having this conversation. I have, for this past year, from the private equity standpoint, have accomplished some things that I can talk
yeah,
about, but I've worked 10-hour days, many days, and not been paid for it. So you made the right choice from the standpoint of like lifestyle is, I'm at a stage where my daughter's been out of the house a long time, and all I would do is go watch your kids play baseball, and that's
right.
probably at some point someone will tell me I'm creepy for watching other people's kids play baseball.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah,
think it's cool. Like, well, especially in the context of the opt out. Like, we're always in these different seasons of life personally, and like where we're at now versus where we were then. But we're always like still deliberately kind of choosing what we want to go after and why. And yeah, I think it's really interesting. Like, I know you're kind of. I mean, you're all in, and part of a group that's taken a pretty big swing, and I think it's going to pay off. But you
yeah,
and I both know what it takes to get there, and it's what you just said, right? So I don't even care
yeah.
if I have a great idea or people I love that are going after a thing at a certain time. It's got to be the right time personally as well to not be upset that you gotta do those 10-hour days, because that's what it takes. That's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny because a lot of people who are our friends, the guys that are on that original, like, kinda opt-out video we had where we had a party and just sorta had people say a lot of our approach to what we talk about, our philosophy of life isn't just ours, right? We've embraced it
Right.
around a kind of cult of sorts. But I said, well, I'm working for a private equity backed plumbing and HVAC roll up, and I'm flying to Austin every Monday and flying back on for the weekend and recovering. And they're like, you are not opted out, my friend. You are
Right. Yeah.
all in. And my response was absolutely. I mean, it's not an indictment to not be opted out, right? It's like in fact, the economics were long-term decisions for me to do that. It wasn't like I was getting paid better than being a lawyer.
Right.
It was that I wanted the experience, and I really needed the flexibility I had from developing the lifestyle that we tell people how to live, where I could go like, okay, I can afford to take a hit financially and work my ass off for someone else for a period of time to learn all the things that I need to learn in order to run this playbook for myself and for my investors. So yeah, I was all in and opted in and working my ass off, and it was all fine. I mean, it's
Mhm.
a cycle I don't want to repeat in the sense of stepping into the shoes of operator and working for somebody else again, but it was a fair trade for the economics and the learning. I mean,
Yeah, dude.
we talked. So the thing you and I kind of when we were toward the end of opt out in terms of wrapping up the podcast, we had like a pretty strong epiphany that most of the entrepreneurs that we interviewed that were successful learned what they did at a job,
Yep.
right? Well, you and I were like, wait a minute, you're like, I'm a professional, marketer, and I learned that from working for people who paid me to learn that and build all those relationships. So your network, your knowledge, your
Mhm.
expertise all got driven into you at someone else's expense. And for you, it was a matter of investing the time and really embracing it as not just a job, right? You were
Right.
like,
Right.
and that made your first company's partners millions of dollars, and it made your second company partners, tens of millions or hundreds of millions, whatever they're still chugging along, right?
Yep.
But for you, the thing that you and I realize is like everyone except a few kind of Shark Tanky venture capital plays, almost everyone else was like, I did this thing at a job, I mastered it, I went on my own, I did it for other people, I built an agency or business around it, and now look, and then I sold that company, and now I have lots of choices and
Mhm.
agency and freedom to do whatever I want to do. And whatever that story is after they've cashed out is not as interesting to me as the journey from a job to the business to the exit, right? Dana Robinson here. Quick plug for my book, The King's Fly Swatter. You can see it here behind me if you're watching this. I've got it in my hand. It's a beautiful hardcover book, printed to make it giftable, something that you can share with a family member, buy as a gift. So this latest book, it's a fable about a person who has a really crappy job. Let's just start there. This is a book that most people can relate to because we've all had crappy jobs. This is the story of Ubar, a servant in the court of a Babylonian king, who masters his boring, monotonous job and then learns to listen to the king, hearing him rule the kingdom while quietly swatting flies behind the king. Eventually, Ubar becomes the wisest and most successful man in the kingdom. The story is fun and it's easy to read, but it's not mythology. It's my story. And as I shared the idea with colleagues and friends, I learned that it was their story. And guess what? It's your story. If you're at a job of any kind, one that you love, one that you hate, one that's just enough to get by, this little book gives fresh perspective on how to leverage that job to get you something greater than a paycheck. The lessons in this parable are entrepreneurial lessons, but not what you might think from the current entrepreneurial zeitgeist. If you or someone you know are looking for a real pathway to entrepreneurship, here's the secret. Your job is the way out of your job. It's counterintuitive, but once you see how it works, you can't unsee it. Learn the way of the fly swatter from the parable of Ubar and from the stories I share from my 30-year business journey. You can get a free copy of The King's Fly Swatter by going to danarobinson.com.
But yeah, like it's in the time since we've last podcasted together in this forum, I mean, you've went out and like redone that exact playbook for yourself, like you're like, we know this works. I've done it in the past. I'm going to go do it again. Like, it's like, eating the dog food or whatever. And I would do it too. Like one of the things I looked at doing uh, during COVID was like going and working with permanent equity with Bshore to help them find deals, which was, and it was not going to be
Mhm.
too different from what, you did, other than it was little less operational and more like deal searching. But I think it points to the fact that we really believe it and that you're on another path and journey to like now using it. You're like in phase 3 of 5, I guess, of what you've been doing the last couple of years. And that's probably where I would start again too. If and when the time comes, I'd probably do the exact same sort of thing that you're doing. Like I want to get into this thing. I know enough about it to be dangerous, but I can't go start my own fund tomorrow. Like, what relationships can
Mhm.
I leverage to go off and like help someone else do it, make a little bit of money on the way along the way, even though it's not gonna make me rich now. That's really cool. Really cool.
Yeah, and you're, I think as one of our investors, you're kind of on the inside, so you're seeing what's it like to establish a private equity
Yeah.
company, raise a fund, have LPs, and become, managers of someone else's money, and to use that to acquire assets. And in our case, those assets are property services businesses. Loosely call it, the trades, the blue collar businesses, and yeah, in the last year, we raised a fund and acquired a couple of landscape maintenance companies, and we have what the industry calls a roll up underway, where we are trying to acquire more kind of retiring owners, landscape maintenance companies, and professionalize those. We have a C suite of operators that have done it, and as the asset managers, kind of our job to find those deals, get our management team that runs the business running their playbook, and to grow that business to a certain point, and then it has more value, and it either throws off cash for our investors or we sell it to a larger private equity fund that might be aggregating a much bigger landscape maintenance company across the country. And then, we hope to do that in other verticals. And, you and I have been in and around the space, for 15 years, but I did have to go get a job in order to really get the inside view, right? And, and I needed more than just the lawyer's seat. I needed to run a business and integrate it. That means you take over a business that's literally like in a barn when you buy it, and then you paste that business to the primary platform with the KPIs, and it was delightful because I was not the first. I was there. We had like 5 branches, I think, when I did the Austin branch. Um, and so there was a playbook to run, and I got to do that from boots on the ground, muddy boots in the barn, through the process of replacing myself with a permanent operator, and taking all that knowledge gives me a lot more confidence with the landscape business that we're rolling up. When we get in a year or two down to what's the next business that we're going to apply our acumen to, I'll probably not get out of the blue collar service business, because now I'm several companies deep in experience
Hmm.
as a operator, which makes me a better kind of advisor, fund manager, steward of other people's money. And yeah, once your boys are too cool for you, and you've got more time, you're sitting there as an investor in a fund watching the machinery go, and you'll be in a perfect position to step in and say, okay, now roll up your sleeves and become the Padawan, I guess, of sorts, to get that last piece of the puzzle in, so that you're the guy that's capable of doing all that stuff.
Yeah. Well, hey,
So
man, I hope the opportunity's there when the time comes. And it's been really cool to, ride along a little bit. And you guys are doing this legit at a level that, I haven't seen. You're kind of starting on second or third base as far as funds go. Although that's more of like a relative scale than anything. But I've seen a lot of like scrappy entrepreneurial search fundies, even permanent equity started, and it's a little bit larger now. But even my more direct experience was them as a smaller group. Links Equity had a lot of businesses, but ultimately I probably only raised about the same amount of money you guys have raised now, and they're around for 10 years. So it's really cool to see it done with like mature diligence and deliberateness, especially with the whole group that you have together. I mean, you guys are all really freaking smart and come from different little backgrounds and experiences. So I'm a big fan. I'm excited, and it's cool to see it done this way because there's a bunch of different ways to do it.
Thank you. It's a little daunting, but also we've all been through so many entrepreneurial experiences. I mean, I think I listed, even if you list even dumb little things that you spend a little time on, I've probably been involved with 30 things.
Yeah.
And I'm just, they're exhausting when they don't go well. And I didn't need another one of those, right? I didn't need
Mhm.
another scrappy startup. I'm happy to invest in the right scrappy startups, as I know, we have those deals come across our desks, but we really wanted to step in as professionals and enter a new ecosystem, earn a seat at a new table.
Yep.
It's not a very welcoming table. I mean, the private equity is, there's some high barriers to entry, and I think the industry wants to keep it that way. So it's pretty hard to be. Actually, it's funny, you see us as incredibly official, formal because of all
Right.
the legal. When we attend trade shows, this is a very Ivy League, kind of MBA world of people with all the same suits.
Yeah.
And Gabe and I in this environment, guys that sort of have alternative views of things, and kind of, I guess, like the subversiveness of guys with tattoos that are Gen
That's so,
X,
yeah,
that,
you got the tattoo quotient. You've won that one.
yeah,
When I join up,
and
I'm
just
catching up with you, baby. I've got like 14 now.
a couple other things for people who are listening. We keep your eye out for more interviews. I'm going to revisit some of the great interviews that we've had in the past, like Alex Martinez, Corey Werner,
Mhm.
people, and catch up with them. I actually want to catch up with Jack Haldrup. Remember, Dr. Squatch,
Oh
founder,
yeah.
was on our show, and we're like, "You wanted to sell soap," and then that company sold it for some enormous sum of money. So,
Yep.
if anyone knows how to get a hold of Jack, I don't think he's still answering his Dr. Squatch email that we used to communicate with. I'd love to get the story, but we'll bring some of those back. We're going to rebrand. One of the plans that Nate and I originally had was to rebrand the whole podcast Exit Plan.
Mhm.
Kind of the idea is interviewing people who've been through an exit, focusing on what did they do to get there and optimize for that exit. I think the cycle that you've been through, Nate, of being part of buying companies for links, being part of vetting and bringing deals to permanent equity, and all of your experience, we have a sense of what do you need to do to prepare a business to sell to private equity, and what should you be looking for, and where's the kind of the how do you play that game the right way.
Mhm.
And so I want guests that have got that, and I want I want our listeners to hear that, because if you're just beginning your journey, why not start learning what that outcome needs to be early on? And if you're already on that journey, you're an entrepreneur, then this is definitely tribe. It's people that you want to be hearing and hear their journey and learn from. And then you and I are talking about bringing back the one thing that actually made us a couple of dollars, the beach camp, right?
Yeah, the event. Funnest
The
thing.
event, we got like 35 or 40 entrepreneurs together, charged a small fee, had a couple sponsors, and had like 2 days of food and meetings, and it was delightful.
I still get testimonials from that, man. I mean, that and just the local parties too. Every single time I see somebody, they're like, "You remember that thing that you had? And then you brought that guy, and I talked to him. Changed me, man.
Yeah,
Changed me." Like, I'm
totally.
like, good, dude. That's why we do it. That's why we do it.
Absolutely. So spring 2024, Nate and Dana opt out. Now exit plan, beach camp. We're looking for mostly people that have got operating businesses with some, call it 5 million plus in revenue, and want to learn from people that are saying, here are the things, the knobs and levers that you need to move to sell to private equity. We'll have a panel of private equity fund managers, sort of agnostic to industry, but people who basically are trying to figure out how do I prepare for an eventual exit. And obviously, if you make your business better while you still own it, you get to keep the money, right? Like, a lot of people are like, what do I have to do to make my business sellable? And I was just looking at a panel in Vegas on landscape maintenance, and the guy up there with this $100 million landscape business is like, build it to make money for you, and someone else will appreciate that when they buy it, right? So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's not like you're learning some secret handshake. It's best practices and things that they ought to be doing, even if you don't plan to sell your company to private equity anytime soon. But the private equity kind of class of service providers, accounting, finance. I guess those are the same thing, but there's this sort of different advisory around accounting and finance and preparing to
Sure.
present kind of the books people need. I want to know if you're listening to this, if you're interested in attending that. I've got a couple of people that are working for me now that filter the emails. It's hello@danarobinson.com. If you want to come to Beach Camp, I want to know a little more about you, and they'll send that to me personally, and Nate and I'll talk about it and get our invite list put together. And what's the future going to hold for Nathaniel Broughton? What's 2024 got on the horizon, man?
Probably a lot of the same. At least I hope so. I like this little run that I'm on. So I got a nice little bit of projects I'm working on with cool people. Still doing stuff digital marketing wise, and web dev and email. And I like what I've got. I like the amount of things I'm working on. So I'm just going to hopefully keep most of those going for the next year or two as is. And yeah, man, just have the kids age up into another level of baseball and school, and hopefully travel a little bit more next year. You mentioned the baseball stuff. Like, we did kind of deliberately not go to Europe this summer and try to keep the schedule open so we could participate a bit more in some of those things. And it was a great experience, and it worked out exactly the way we wanted it to. But I also want to, continue to try to strike a little bit of balance on that side. So we've got a few trips planned for next year currently, and we'll try to find the right way to work them into the competitive baseball schedule of Southern California. The endless weather, beautiful weather. It's the turkey tournament, the December season, the Santa Claus tournament, the New Year's tournament. This is not what I remember doing on Thanksgiving when I was 9 years old, waking up early the next day and going to baseball. But my parents also didn't take me to the racetracks on Thanksgiving, which we're doing too. So, it's a little bit of a different life.
Well, look at thanks for the catch up, and for our listeners, hopefully you enjoy the new feed with the exit plan theme and the interviews that are coming forward. Nate will pop on. I'm not making him obligated to join every time, but he's always invited to co-host with me. And this shameless self-promotion, get on my newsletter now instead of the opt-out. We're just running the newsletter off from danarobinson.com. Get on that, and we'll give you some free resources. And of course, when you go to my homepage, there's a link flashing at the top to get on the pre-order for my book, The King's Fly Swatter, where you get some bonuses and including the audiobook from that one. So Nate, my brother, Nate bro, thank you for taking some time. And to our former opt-out podcast audience, we love you, and we're stoked to be back.
Thank you, sir. Always a pleasure.
Thanks for joining me on this episode of the Exit Plan podcast. I'd love to hear from you. Feel free to hit me up with questions or comments by emailing me at hello@danarobinson.com, or leave comments and questions by calling 858-252-7785. Call 858-252-7785 and leave a message.